Welcome back to another episode of Everything You Need to Know Before You Buy, a series inspired by Jake Baldina's Before You Buy series, where I gather all the news and trailers of an upcoming game and formulate an opinion on whether you should buy this game or not. I don't know if the game is actually good or not since I don't have access to a view copy of some sort, so I'm in the same position as you, the viewer. But the whole aim of the series is to give you some knowledge and guidance for these upcoming games. With that out of the way, here's everything you need to know before you buy the Callisto Protocol. The Callisto Protocol is a survival horror game developed by Striking Distance Studio, releasing on December 2nd on platforms like the 8th and 9th generation of PlayStation and Xbox, as well as PC. The founder and CEO of Striking Distance Studio is no other than Glen Schofield, who's known for being the co-creator of the sci-fi horror series Dead Space made by Visceral Games. You can actually see the similarities between the two games once we see some gameplay later on. Development started in June 2019, the same month Striking Distance Studio got founded. Schofield managed to join up with Krafton, a South Korean video game holding company known for publishing and acquiring games, like Terra, an MMO that recently shut down after 11 years, and PUBG Battlegrounds, a battle royale game that's been added for a while. Initially, Striking Distance was developing a narrative-driven game expanding on the PUBG universe, but later confirmed by Schofield in May 2022 that the Callisto Protocol is its own thing unrelated to PUBG, though there will be some references here and there. So what's the Callisto Protocol about? The game is set in the year 2320. We play as Jacob Lee, a prisoner held in Black Iron Prison, located on one of Jupiter's moons called Callisto. When inmates begin to transform into monstrous creatures, the prison is thrown into chaos. Our goal is to escape Black Iron Prison while uncovering the dark secrets buried beneath the surface of Callisto. An interesting premise, which brings us on to the next section, which is the gameplay. As mentioned before, the Callisto Protocol is very similar to Dead Space. You can instantly see the similarities, the third-person perspective, the health HUD on the character, and the environment for example. From what I've seen, there are a few noticeable differences between the two games. The first one is combat. Jacob has access to firearms, a baton for melee, and a gravity gun called the Grip or GRP, which allows you to pick up an enemy and fling them to a wall or fan for example. The Grip does have a cooldown system, so you can't be abusing it all the time. However, you can find a 3D printing station to upgrade your weapons, which will be represented as a skill tree. It's been confirmed by Schofield that you cannot upgrade every weapon fully on your first playthrough. Lastly, we can see that Jacob has the ability to stealthily kill and dodge, which you don't see every day in a survival horror game, a useful tool against enemies which adds options in combat. Speaking of enemies, there's a slight difference between the two games. In Dead Space, we had necromorphs, which were mutated corpses, and in the Callisto Protocol, we have biophages, which are mutated humans. As you can see here, you should notice that the biophages are human-like, which are nothing like the amalgamations you see in Dead Space. There may be some similarities between the bipedal monsters, but Striking Distance use a concept called designed realism, where they would use a human scan and manipulate their features to create the horrific monsters that you see on screen. We don't know the full lineup of biophages until the full release, but they're not all bipedal. Here's one that's on all fours that's very unsettling to look at. The fact that the biophages looks like they were once human is definitely what Striking Distance was going for, and because of that, I think that's what sets it apart from the necromorphs in Dead Space. Additionally, the biophages can mutate even further, which adds a new spin to things. Once you've dealt a certain amount of damage, some tentacles will pop out of their body. You have to destroy it to kill it. If not, the biophage will transform into an enhanced version or different type of biophage it seems. Next, let's talk about the replayability. As said before, you can't fully customize and upgrade your weapons in the first playthrough. Schofield confirms that the game's length will be around 12 to 14 hours for your first playthrough, and you'll most likely miss something called Beta Pass. There's not a lot of information about it, except that it'll appear during the game's later acts, and will allow the player an opportunity to grind for extra materials. Maybe it's possible to find them on your first playthrough, maybe not. Now the section you've all been waiting for, should you buy the Callisto Protocol? The game is going for £55 to £50 full price depending on which platform you choose. It's less than a AAA game, but still a high price to pay. If you're looking for a third-person survival horror game for this winter season, this is the game for you, definitely worth the purchase. Aside from Glen Schofield, Striking Distance Studio has a few former co-workers from Visceral Games and Sledgehammer Games, so I think the Callisto Protocol is in good hands. And since I've talked about Dead Space a lot in this video, I haven't mentioned the remake that is coming out on the 27th of January next year. If you haven't played Dead Space before, you can consider buying the remake, although you may want to try out the original 2008 Dead Space beforehand. If you're torn between the two, I think you can't go wrong buying one or the other, but it depends if you are a really big fan of Dead Space or want to try something new that's similar to Dead Space. And that's it for this video. Schofield claims that the Callisto Protocol is an all-new game, set in a new universe, new characters, new story, and new mechanics. It's been almost 15 years since Dead Space, and now with today's technology, they can do things in the Callisto Protocol they would have dreamed to implement back then. Fun fact is that Striking Distance cancelled its Japan release because they refused to change the violent content the game had, in line with Japan's SERA requirements. Expect a lot of blood and gore. The death scenes are brutal, but obviously that's par for the course for this type of survival horror game. The next few months are looking good for survival horror fans. I can't wait for Resident Evil 4 Remake, which comes out on the 24th of March, and most likely I'll be doing a video on that. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this episode of everything you need to know before you buy. If you want to support the channel, be sure to like and subscribe, and as always, I'll see you guys next time and catch you guys later. Take care.